Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, whether it's good evening, good night, or good morning, depending on where you are, where you're hopping on from. I'm Dr. Twanna Carter, and as a career coach, I work with stress. Busy women executives who are plagued by imposter syndrome, self criticism, and doubt to help them alleviate their stress so that they can find peace of mind and fully focus on excelling in their careers. As you know, tonight we have a great topic. We're actually talking about strategies for setting boundaries for Black women in leadership. So, want to start off with some statistics. They're great statistics. I'm not gonna, run it out too long, but they're really great statistics. For those of you that are hopping on, I see people are hopping on. Go ahead and drop a one in the comments if you can hear me. And if you like, let me know where you're hopping on from as well. Those of you who catch this on the replay, thank you as well. And you too can drop replay and let me know where you're hopping on from. I know that I'm live in 8 different places tonight. Um, and so for those of you that are in my Facebook groups, my secret Facebook groups, you can comment. Your name will not be given. If you want your name seen on screen, you just need to click the link that I have there for you, right? So let's talk about some statistics here. Now, this is according to Zippia, right? So Zippia, the career expert, said that of the 38,708 CEOs in the United States, 31.5 of them are women. 31.5% of over 38,000 CEOs in the United States, 31.5%, almost 32% are women, right? The most common ethnicity of CEOs, chief executive officers, CEOs is white, 81.1. The next common ethnicity is Hispanics or Latinos, and they're at 7%. Following that are Asians, and they're at 6.8. And then following that is African Americans. They're 3.2%. Right? So it's important because, like, we talked about, today's topic is, strategies for setting boundaries for Black women in leadership. And we're talking about only 33.2 Black, and that's men and women are Black, right? The numbers start to do this as you start talking about Black women. So that's important because you may often find that you're the only Black woman in leadership in your organization. And that's what I want to get down to today. Now, let's look at Fortune 500. We hear a lot about Fortune 500 versus all CEOs in the United States. So if we're only looking at the Fortune 500, right, only 15% of CEOs at Fortune 500 companies are female. When we start teasing out the numbers of Latinos or Black folks, we start getting into some of those we can actually count them on our fingers, one hand even, right? And so again, what happens if you're the only senior Black female leader at your organization? Because here's what most of us have been told, right? Hey, Yvette, thanks for hopping on. Yvette Liaison, thanks for hopping on. Here's what we're told. We know the drill. If you want to be a leader, you want to get to the C-suite, you got to find a mentor, you got to eventually get a sponsor, and you want to find the folks who are doing the moving and the shaking and they're doing well, and you want to, link up with them, connect with them, get them in your network so that you can do what they do, talk to them, get good advice, great, guidance so that you can make it there too. But if you are the only senior leader, female leader in an organization, and all of the women there are looking up to you for guidance, that ooh, that can get a little tricky. It can get a little tricky, right? Now, I'll say this a couple times throughout the live today. We all know you cannot pour from an empty vessel. But we also know that one of the most important roles of someone currently in leadership is to prepare the next crop, the next cohort of leaders. So you can't close off and say, I don't have time in my life for that. No, because whether they're black, they're Latina, they're Asian, they're white, it is your job as a leader to prepare the next group coming up. So you can't just opt out. I guess you could, but most of us don't, right? And so how do black women really avoid feeling obligated to work long hours? Sometimes we feel like we still got to prove our words because the imposter syndrome is still there, and we feel obligated not to leave anyone behind who also is seeking wisdom from us or seeking guidance from us. And there has to be a balance with all of that, because otherwise you're trying to pour from an empty vessel, and we know that doesn't work, right? But there has to be a balance with all of that, and what steps into the picture to give you that balance is boundary setting, and that's what I'm talking about today, right? I am talking about boundary setting. So if you have comments or you have questions, don't be afraid to drop them in the comments, and I will read them, and let me be sure. So yes. um Perfect, perfect, perfect. So I am making sure that I have everything situated so I can see my comments when you leave your comments, right? So definitely, boundaries for some people is a bad word. I know. I'm conflict avoidant, so setting a boundary was really, really tough for me for many, 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 many years, right? But how do you set up boundaries that work for you, so that you're not the only one in an organization that everyone is requesting help from, right? So, setting boundaries doesn't mean that you're not working hard, because we know that you are. It also doesn't mean that you're not sharing with the next generation of leaders, nor does it mean you're working yourself into burnout either. So, what does it mean? What really does it mean? It means that you learn to work smart. It means that you do set up the boundaries to protect you first. Now, I know that's an odd thing for Black women, because we are not socialized to protect ourselves first. We are not. We are not. In fact, you want to know the truth, women are not socialized to protect themselves first. We're socialized to do for others. We're socialized to take care of family members. If you're an older daughter, if you're the oldest or the oldest, even if you're not the oldest child, if you're an older, if you're more responsible, you probably got a lot of responsibility put on you as a child. And that only kind of heaps a little higher the older you got. Even if there was a boy who was the oldest person in the family, that girl became responsible. If you were mature enough, you were responsible enough. So we tend to we make sure we caretake and make sure everyone else is taken care of. Well, guess what? When we become leaders in the workplace, we do the same exact thing. We want to make sure everybody's taken care of, but you can't, because as I said it before, you can't pour from an empty vessel. You cannot. Okay. So what do we do? That's why I'm here today, because I'm going to give you my strategies, right? I'm going to give you 13 strategies for how to set boundaries to be sure you are taken care of, and get your subordinates or other folks who come to you for your wisdom and your guidance. Get them what they need without you feeling like you've got to do it all. So, without further ado, here are my 13 strategies for setting healthy boundaries when you're it. It's like, tag you're it. You're the only senior woman, right? Only senior Black female leader in your organization. And notice I don't even always just say CEOs, because there are a lot of leaders at different levels, but sometimes you're it, and you're the person they come to. So number one, I say nip the imposter syndrome, nip it in the bud. Just nip it, right? Really, you have to work hard on not letting it don't let her make herself at home in your life, in your personal life, nor your career. Right. So if you've been with me for the past 5 weeks, you know that I spoke about the imposter syndrome for the last 5 weeks. So I'm just gonna drop my YouTube link here, and you can go out to YouTube, because I don't want to rehash all of those 5 hours or three and a half hours or so of training. But you can go to my LinkedIn and I'm sorry, my YouTube page, and you can listen to those live so you don't miss anything, right? You can also read my articles. I'm doing a series of articles on medium.com. Okay. And you can also read the articles there. So we don't have to relitigate imposter syndrome, because yes, you are a leader and yes, you have imposter syndrome too, but don't let it sit and hang around. Do get help for that, because remember, 70% of the world, 70% of the people in the entire world get a visit from the imposter syndrome at some point in their life. Just nip it, as Barney Fife would say, nip it in the bud, right? Number two, do advocate for yourself, right? If you are not receiving the respect and the treatment in the workplace that you know you've earned, you deserve, speak up. You are worth it. You deserve to be respected by coworkers and, of course, subordinates and other managers, all of that, right? And as a Black woman in America, I know all too well that you've worked hard to get where you are. And let's just face it, women, when we get these positions, we've really worked hard. Okay. So, one of the best things you can do is advocate for yourself. Why? Because by advocating for yourself, you are now teaching your subordinates, those people who are looking up to you and emulating you, you're teaching them how to emulate you, how to advocate for themselves. You don't even have to say a word to them, because they will look at your actions, right? Number three, avoid the G word. What's the G word? What's the G word? Guilty. For a moment, take a quick look back at your career. You did not get to where you are by only one person pouring into you to get you here. No. So leave out the guilt about not being able to pour into every single person who asks you. There was more than one person who poured into you. And so understand there will be other folks who can pour into subordinates and people looking for guidance. You just need to figure out how to put them in contact with the right folks, right? So don't feel guilty. And I know I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty. I know. But you don't have to, right? It takes more than one person to pour into you. So, get rid of that guilt. Don't walk around all guilty and stuff. Number four is important. Four, um, set clear expectations with your boss. A mentor once told me, start out like you can hold out. Start out like you plan on holding out. If you set expectations walking in the door, you cannot speak to me like this. Here are my hours. I do email from this time to this time. My office hours when I have an open doors this time. Whatever it is, set clear expectations. If you set them up front, right? Everyone knows them. They kind of follow suit. They follow in line, right? If you get to your job, and depending on where you are, if there's a line of people standing outside your door with issues and problems, right? But you know how you are. You need a cup of coffee before you start talking to anybody. You need to set that as an expectation with your boss and your subordinates as well. Hey, yes, I get to work at 6:45 in the morning. I don't talk to people until 7:15. So my quiet office hours, I'm in the office, I'm doing this, I'll start seeing people at 7:15. Whatever it is, set the expectations. Setting expectations, another word for boundaries. That's right. Okay. Number five, do set productivity goals, because remember, being busy all day long is not the same as being productive. And sometimes we can get caught in that trap of trying to be all things for all people. And we're busy all day long, but we get nothing productive done. Again, do this and you're leading by example. If you are on the job, on it 24 hours a day, because all day long you're answering text messages and phone calls at 9 o'clock at night, you're still texting it, you're setting an example. You're also setting an example of someone who may be leading to burnout eventually, right? You can't be on 24 hours a day. And when you do set productivity goals, you make sure that you can do number six. Be intentional about self care. Self-care is not selfish. Two different words. Okay. Anyone else out there heard of that before? Self-care is not selfish. They're two different words. Be intentional about self-care because once again, you are leading by example. You know, be it you have daily self-care goals, if you have weekly or you have monthly, whatever it is, you cannot pour from an empty cup, right? And really, this may be the most important thing that you emulate for your subordinates or folks who look up to you for guidance, right? Implicitly, you're saying no matter what happens, you're communicating, take care of yourself. Maybe the best thing you ever do. Okay. And then that leads us into number 7, stay in contact with your circle of support. Very important. If you're like me, especially I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, I have 2 businesses, I see clients, on different days. It can get really easy to get wrapped up into what you do for other people and you become a silo. You want to stay in contact with that circle of support. Surround yourself with a team of people who are willing to help you, whether that's by mentorship, by sponsorship, or especially, it's always to have a couple of good girlfriends, a good guy friends who will put you in check when you are siloing, or they'll put you in check when you've allowed productivity or your job to creep into your personal life and then self-care has flown out the window. Have that one, two, or three people who will put you in check with love, but they will put you in check because you need that, right? And you need to spend time with your families. We have all these different roles. We're mothers, sisters, daughters, aunties, right? We have all those roles. So, whoever it is, if it's your pet, stay in contact. It helps you when they see your train going off the rails and you're just work, 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 or you're close to burnout, they will step in and say something to you. But the thing is, they got to be trusted, and you have to listen to them as well. You can't tell them to go jump off the ship somewhere and leave you alone. It really needs to be someone who you trust, and they trust you and they speak honestly to you, right? Number 8, build coalitions and allyship in your office because you can use this as a way to share knowledge. Share knowledge as well as get knowledge because everything doesn't always have to come from you, right? You can use your coalitions and your allyships as resources for the folks. So you can refer folks that come to you and say, hey, I'd like for you to mentor me, or I'd like to talk to you, or I'd like to discuss this with you. You can say, hey, great. You know what? I know such and such. She's really great at that. Or I know this person. He's really good at that. Build those allyships and those coalitions, and you're able to do that. Number 9 is super, super important. Create a list of resources. I've been doing this one for, what is it now? For about, oh my gosh, 29, no, 19 years. Next year will be the 20th year, right? When I started working, because a lot of you don't know, I am a licensed therapist as well as a career coach, a professional certified coach. And when I started my master's program, everybody started going, hey, you're a counselor now. You can help me. What should I do? Where should I go? Who should I call? You're a counselor. You got to help me. That's your job. And it got overwhelming. And so what I started doing is creating a list of resources. Sometimes people will ask me about the same thing a lot. So what I will start doing is create a resource, a list of resources. Hey, here's a person that helps with that. This organization helps with that. Here's EAP. Did you know your EAP helps you with that? Yes, go call them. Here's a number. And so I really wouldn't sit down in the moment with people and say, hey, let me help you find a resource. No, create a list so that you're just handing them a list of resources and they can go do that for themselves. Because the more people are doing for themselves when they ask you for guidance or help or assistance or that type of thing, the less you're feeling like you're giving out stuff, right? A resource list is a great way to give guidance, information, right? Advice. You know, what else can be on your resources? Articles. You read articles all the time. If you don't, you should be. You read books. If you don't, you should be. You listen to podcasts. Those are all resources. Keep the list. Hey, I heard this podcast, and I have actually done that. Had someone call me up for XYZ, and it's like, oh my gosh, I literally just read this article 2 days ago. Here you go read that. Let me know what you think. Right? This way, you have a resource list so you don't feel like you're always on or you're overwhelmed because everybody wants everything from you at all times, right? And you can even task, folks that come to you for help, you can even task them. Like, you know what? You're the fourth person this week that's asked me about that. Why don't you go look that up and let's all come together and share that, right? Because then that taps down into number 10. Consider, if you folks want you to give guidance or they want to talk to you, consider doing it in small groups. Right? And I say small groups. I'm an introvert, so I love doing things in small groups. If you're a big group person, you're an extrovert, and that works for you, do it in a larger group, right? And it could be a lot of folks do it with a brown bag lunch where maybe once a quarter, come in with your brown bag lunch. You ask people for topics, you pick out whatever you want to do, or you pick out someone else do come along with you. But it's a great way of doing small group. Everybody is learning from each other. And again, that takes all the onus off of you feeling like you've got to be all things for all people, right? And here's the other thing, when you also task people with doing some of this, you're giving them a chance to rise up and shine, right? You're the leader. You got what you got. You know who you are. But again, we're talking about training the next set of folks behind you. This is an excellent way. It's perfect to give people, we're going to have a brown bag every quarter. You do something on this, you do something on that. Whatever people are asking you, task them with doing the research and giving them a brown bag. And all you're doing is facilitating. It's just much easier to facilitate than it is to feel like you got to come up with all the ideas, do all the research, and put everything on, right? And number 11 is really important. It's real simple. Ask way more questions than you give answers. It is the best way to set boundaries because what you're doing is telling folks you have insight. You can do this. Let's talk about it. Let me ask you some questions, right? Because all of this now, I know this seems funny. You're like, I thought you were talking about setting boundaries and you're giving us all these tips. Right. The boundary is that you're not going to do it all yourself. You're not expected to know it all. You're not expected to do it all yourself. But when you start putting these strategies into play, you don't have to do it all yourself. But B, you're also giving folks a chance to shine and do the research and present, and then be a help for others. You're also, expanding your network and building those coalitions. So definitely ask way more questions than you give answers, right? Because it's, what does it say? Give a man a fish and you feed him for a meal, but teach him how and he'll feed himself for a while. So if you translate that, to give a woman a fish, however you want to do it, but you're teaching people how to advocate, how to do, how to think, how to get that insight for themselves. It saves you from feeling like, I'm feeling guilty because I'm not sharing with folks. No, you let go of the G word, you teach people how to do for themselves as well, right? And also use organizations, right? There are probably plenty of organizations that you've been a part of or you still are part of that help you to get where you are. You know, don't hesitate to refer folks to those organizations. If it's knowledge people are asking you, because oftentimes it is, but if it's also about networking, refer them to those different organizations again. Don't feel like you've got to do everything. We're talking about putting in place boundaries so you can do your job. Be sure that you're taking care of you. You be sure that you've got your relationship with your sponsor going, all the while building relationships and mentoring if you want to do that, or giving guidance and advice to folks who come to you for guidance and advice. And then number 13 is important. Hire a coach. That is why there's so many executive coaches and career coaches out here. It's because you do need that person that you go to. And a coach will help you set boundaries, and they'll also help you stay accountable to the boundaries you said you wanted, right? I have 3 coaches for that very reason, because I can get caught up with giving and giving and giving. So that is why I have my coach. And my coach is very like, Twanna, do you really need to be doing that? And I love my coach. One of my coaches is Jared. And what Jared asked me, he said, Twanna, what are you not going to do? That's an important question. What are you not going to do? Basically, what is it of all the things out there? Where are you putting your boundaries? Where are you drawing your boundaries? What are you not going to do? And that's what he asked me like every single meeting. We always end up with, Twanna, what are you not going to do? It sets boundaries, and that's what he does for me, right? So hopefully, you picked up on a common thread here is lead by example, and you are not expected to do everything for everybody. You can't be everything to everybody, and again, you cannot pour from an empty vessel, right? One of the best ways to preserve your mental health, to preserve your emotional health and your physical health, your spiritual health, right, is by setting healthy boundaries, right? Best way to do it. It takes a boundary is there to take care of you first. We don't put boundaries around other people. That's not what we do. Boundaries are for us. It lets the people in we need to let in, and it keeps the gate there to keep the people out or keep them at the distance that is healthy for you, right? Are they changeable? Yes. But when you start setting boundaries, this is what I do with my clients. You should not be changing your boundaries wishy washy because no one will respect them. You want to at the beginning, you really want to set them and stick to them. Now, let me be honest and say, and I always tell my clients this when I'm working with them, setting boundaries can be one of the most challenging things for you to do, especially if you're like me. I'm a recovering people pleaser. I'm conflict avoidant. So I never wanted to set a boundary at any time, any place, any time, ever with anybody. So, yes, it is challenging. I'll say that, right? And I always tell my clients when you set boundaries, you take people off. You just do because you're closing off access to something that they want from you. It doesn't mean that's wrong. It's just that if you conflict avoidant, you're people pleaser, that can be tough, right? It's also the reason why a lot of professional women don't set boundaries. Also, the reason why they get burned out too. They get stressed out, they get burned out. So, if you are someone that struggles with setting boundaries and you're looking for help to help you do that, right? Whether you've been in the job for a number of years or whether you're just walking into the door and the job seems kind of overwhelming because everybody wants something and they all want it now, right? There is help. I'm here for you. I do offer a 15-minute career solution call where we'll sit down and we'll talk about your goals, where you are and what your goals are. I share with you what I do, and if I'm absolutely certain that I can help you, I'll get you started with the next step. And that just typically means that I typically, after that 15-minute conversation, and I can't sell you anything because it's just 15 minutes, it is where I offer you a complimentary 45 to 60-minute session where we really do a deep dive and see what it is that you need, come up with a plan of how to help you. So definitely, if that's where you are, just drop boundaries in the chat, in the comments, and I'll reach out to you and get you set up for that first 15-minute career solution call because it's tough. It is tough. If you're someone like me who's an introvert, an empath, social anxiety, conflict avoidant, boundaries are tough. They don't have to be if you get the right guidance, right? So thank you for being here today. Next week, you'll want to be here because I have another great topic for you. The topic next week is tips for Black women to exit the survival mode in the workplace and thrive instead. So, yes, we're going to talk about why people are in survival mode at the job, why it doesn't serve you well, and what you need to do to be able to thrive, right? So, if you want to learn how to thrive instead of survive in the workplace, be back here next week at the same time, 8:35 p.m., 7:35 Central Time, and 5:35 p.m. on the Pacific Standard Time. Thanks for being here. Take care, and I will see you next week.